You're trapped on a desert island. You can only take 5 filmmaking items with you. What are they going to be? Well, I mean, if you were trapped on a desert island, I'd probably take 5 bits of food and something to make fire. But in any case, in this video, we're going to be talking about 5 filmmaking items that are the most essential. I've been working in this game for about 6 years now, and a question that I always ask filmmakers, video producers when they join the team, which I always think is a nice little experiment, is if you could only have 5 pieces of gear as a filmmaker, what would they be? And you get some interesting answers out of people, but in this video is to share my top 5 bits of filmmaking gear that I have that I think are absolutely essential and should be the first thing that you should get as a filmmaker. So without further ado, let's get into it. First one seems pretty obvious, but you want to get one of these? A multi-tool? No, of course, I'm joking. The first thing you want is a camera. So my A-cam at the moment, my go-to right now is the Sony FX6. The most important thing, obviously, as a filmmaker that you're going to need is a camera. You can't shoot anything without a camera. So fundamentally, you need it. The Sony FX6 is my squeeze at the moment, and I've had it for about 2.5 years since it first came out. In fact, I'm filming on one right now, and I bought another one. So that's how much I like this camera. But in any case, it goes without saying, you just got to get the camera that you can afford at the time. There's so many capable cameras, from mirrorless all the way to the super high end, that you can get a really capable camera these days, especially if you're willing to go second hand as well, which I would definitely recommend if you're struggling for cash. Okay, so item number 2, which I think is most important for a filmmaker to get in their desert island pack, is you're going to need a light. Yes, okay, you can use natural light a lot of the time to help things, but let's be honest, lighting does really make a massive difference. It's one of the most important things in a film, is the way that it's lit. Whether you're doing something really simple like an interview, or whether you're shooting products, or whether you're shooting full scene for some sort of drama or documentary or whatever it may be. Having a light, at least one good solid light. So my particular fixture that I invested in was a Aputure 300D. You want to have a really good light source that you can rely on, that is capable and isn't going to let you down. I'd say in particular with lights, I've invested in cheap lights and I've invested in more expensive lights. The Aputure ones are a bit more expensive, and I've had their main rival, Godox, and honestly, for the sake of spending a few extra quid, I say a few extra, it's probably a few hundred extra, it is worth it because the build quality is better. The old one that I had broke within about 6 months of having it, so I'd definitely say spend a little bit more. The gear will last you a little bit longer. But if you're looking at that essential list as a filmmaker, a key light comes in at a very, very important second choice for me as things that you need. Okay, so item number 3, 50% of the viewing experience is the audio. You've got to have good audio. If you've got a camera that's shooting really nice imagery, but you don't have any audio, you're really going to struggle to tell a good story. So I would recommend investing in a good bit of kit. I'm a fan of these, the NTG microphones. I've bought an NTG3 and a couple of NTG2s, and I think when you're going through the process of deciding what microphone should I buy, I think it's easier for people to fall into the trap of saying, I'm going to get a lavalier mic, I'm going to get one that I can just clip on to people. But my recommendation would actually be to invest a little bit more, get a decent shotgun mic. The reason is they'll give you a cleaner, fuller audio, but you can also use them in multiple scenarios. So a lavalier mic, you're going to need to attach it to a subject, or if you're using it handheld like this, it's not going to have the same sensitivity or give you the same fullness in your audio as using something like a shotgun. In addition, you can get the shotgun, you can just strap it on top of your camera really easily in most cases, and then you can get that ambient sound and get the audio directly burnt into your video itself, which saves you another job when you get to editing. A good shotgun mic is probably going to cost you in the region of £200 to £400 to get a decent one. You can get the slightly lower spec ones like the Rode VideoMic Pro, really capable microphones. I've got one of those that I use on the mirrorless camera setups that I use. But if you are serious about your filmmaking, you want to get really good clean audio, I'd recommend investing a little bit more if you can afford to. Get a decent shotgun mic. Sennheiser have got some really good models, and also Rode have some really good models too. Okay, so item number 4, must have essential as a filmmaker, is a decent tripod. Invest in a decent tripod. You're going to use a tripod all the time, whether that's interviewing somebody, whether you are shooting handheld and you need somewhere to put your camera down so it's not going to be sat on the floor. Also, if you get a tripod with a good ball head joint, maneuverability, and it also has lots of abilities to pan and tilt, you can use a tripod to get so many different shots. It's one of those things that if you invest in a good one early, you're going to keep for 10 years as a filmmaker and it's not going to let you down. I've tried quite a few different ones. So currently the camera is on a Manfrotto over there, which is a really solid tripod, wasn't too expensive, a couple of £100. To these ones, this is a Cayer BV30L, nice name, it really rolls off the tongue, but these are relatively inexpensive, these tripods. Had those for several years, never let me down, have been absolutely spot on to use. But that does come in at number 4 as one of the most important things that you're going to need. You're going to use it all the time. It's a good investment. Get yourself a tripod. Okay, the final thing that you absolutely do need, otherwise your camera ain't going to be able to shoot anything, is a lens. And invest in a good lens if you can. I know that's kind of been the motif of this, but that's a lesson that I've had to learn the hard way as a filmmaker. I'm a Yorkshireman. I'm from the north of England, where people in Yorkshire are known for being a little bit tight, not wanting to spend their money. So I've always tried to look for some cheaper alternatives for gear, but over the years, the more and more I've spent on gear and got bad gear, the more and more I've realized it's better to spend a little bit more, have your bank balance hurt a little bit so you can get something that's better, but it's going to last you and then it's not going to cost you in the long run having to buy stuff over and over and over again. And lenses are actually really important, not because they're going to break, because a cheap lens can actually be quite good and it won't break. However, a more expensive lens gives you a more expensive looking quality of shot. And it's one of those things that as a filmmaker, you spend a lot of money on a camera and you think, fucking hell, I've got to spend another several £1,000s or dollars on a lens. But the lens is actually one of the things that can add the most character and also the most level of quality to a video. If you've got a Sony FX6 and it costs £6,000 and you put a really cheap lens on it, if you make that pairing, it's still going to look good, but you're not really getting the most out of the camera. You need to have a decent quality lens in order to help the camera and its sensor and the color science be able to perform well with a good pairing of something that is at the same spec and the same caliber of quality as the camera that you're using. Lens wise, I've invested in some Sony G Masters. I'm currently shooting on this camera here with a 24-70 2.8, and then I've got a 70-200 f4 here. They're really good lenses. I've got no complaints with them. However, what I would say is if you're investing and if we're doing this 5 essential list, I would go for a zoom lens. I'd get a 24-70 like is on the camera at the moment. I find that's a really nice balance of focal ranges where you can get close enough with a 70 that you're nearly at the macro and wide enough on the 24 that you can use it across that focal range for a lot of different shooting setups. On the note of lenses though, one thing that I would say, which is a little caveat to my earlier point about investing in good glass, is the exception to that rule is if you invest in some vintage glass. So I've got a Canon vintage lens and I'm also about to purchase one of the Helios 44 lenses. Now these have some really unique characteristics, really unique looks. They're entirely manual in terms of their aperture, in terms of their focus, so they're a little bit more challenging to use if you used to autofocus on something like a G Master with a Sony camera. But they're going to challenge you as a filmmaker, but they also give you interesting characteristics and they're actually quite cheap. You can pick up these vintage lenses for about £40 or £50. So if you're looking at a basic kit that you want to go out and make films with, but you can't afford to spend loads on a lens, then I would recommend having a look at some vintage options because you can pick them up for in the region of £40 to £60, $40 to $60, and you can get some really, really interesting cinematic looking results off the back of using them. The recent short film that I shot called Creative Paralysis, I'll put a link to it somewhere on here, was shot entirely on an FD 50mm vintage lens, which cost me about 40 quid. I did put some filtration on it, but that is just a great example of using an old lens with a bit of character with a new camera like the FX6 and getting some really cool aesthetics and really cool results out of it. Okay, so I'm on a desert island. I've taken my 5 filmmaking items with me. That's what they are. Let me know in the comments below, what are your 5 most important filmmaking bits of gear? What do you think I've missed? What would you take on that desert island with you? If you enjoyed this video, I'd be really grateful if you do me a sweet one. Hit the like button, give it a little headbutt, punch a little comment in the comment section, let me know your thoughts. And also, if you want to keep up to date with what I'm doing on a daily basis, I'm always shooting commercials for major brands and lots of interesting behind the scenes content I'm posting on my Instagram. So if you want to check me out over there, my handle is @JosephHousley. If you enjoyed this, I appreciate it. I love you. Thank you for watching. And that's it really. I haven't got anything more to say. Have a nice rest of your day. Have a nice rest of your year. Have a nice rest of your week. Just have a good life really. Take it easy. Bye.